Hi, this is Paul. I want to make a video about the whole Donald Trump and the Somalians. Donald Trump was in a cabinet meeting earlier this past week, and he made the comments where he called because there's been apparently PPE fraud in Minnesota with the Somalians, and then I think they arrested a bunch of people. But of course, it wasn't all of the Somalians that are there, but there was a good portion of them that committed fraud. And they weren't the only people that committed fraud. If you go through the history, that whole PP loans at the time, when people, when COVID started, they had given a lot of PPE loans and stuff to a lot of people, and a lot of people committed fraud. Okay, Donald Trump is just focusing on those Somalians in Minnesota because he wants to use that as a pretext so he can send ICE, which he is sending ICE there, so to chase and round up and build up more numbers. And he removed protection for them because they was actually brought over here. I think during the Bush administration, they were sent over here because I think they had a civil war, and he allowed them to come over here to do that. And of course, like I said, he referred to Somalians as garbage people and said the country's garbage and just a bunch of disparaging things. Okay, and just again, like I said, as you know, watching this channel, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump at all. Okay, I think he's a horrible racist man, and I think karma will catch up to him eventually. I really do think that. But I didn't know this until I was watching news reports and stuff, and there were a bunch of Somalis that came out for Donald Trump, ironically enough. Just think about Latinos for Trump, Cubans for Trump, okay, blacks for Trumps, okay. And I guess these Somalians, I saw their press conferences, I think I saw two of them, where they were saying that, the Democratic Party left them behind, so they're going with Donald Trump, okay? Now, I don't believe, again, what he said about those people, calling people garbage is just absolutely despicable thing to do. And those people that committed fraud, they will be prosecuted and either spend time in jail or get deported, okay? But he's just using that as a pretext to smear all the Somalians that are in the country. That's why he removed the protection. But that's all. It'll make it easier for them to deport them back. Okay, but at the same time, because we also saw some of these Somalians saying that they don't consider themselves black. Okay, they basically were just disparaging American blacks and stuff, calling them all kinds of names and all that stuff. And again, like I said, I have no love for Donald Trump at all. Again, like I said, hopefully karma is going to catch up to him. Okay, and I think it will eventually, because he's a horrible, narcissistic person, and he's just a despicable human being, okay, and it's a shame that he's the president of this country. I really am ashamed that he is, again, okay, but these Somalians that voted for him, like they didn't know, people warned them, okay, people warned them and told them ahead of time that Donald Trump was racist and xenophobic, okay, and him and Stephen Miller were going to do mass deportation, and like I said, they didn't just stop at criminals. They're rounding up everybody that's even people that are going to their immigration appointments. They're arresting people in the courthouses and stuff. So he's not only doing that to criminals. He's doing it to everybody. He's abusing his power. It's basically what he's doing. Okay, and like I said, hopefully one day they will be held accountable for that. Them and ICE, I think, will be held accountable one day. But until now, and I feel bad for the people in Minnesota, the Somalians that did everything they were supposed to do, pay their taxes and stuff and go to work and everything else, but they're going to be rounded up because Donald Trump is an evil human being. And like I said, at the same time, I hope they learn their lesson that everybody else, apparently, that the Cubans and the other Latinos and the blacks for Trump learn, okay, that they messed around with Donald Trump, knowing his history and knowing who he is. And the only reason Donald Trump ran for president was to stay out of jail. Yeah, Donald Trump has no great love of this country, no matter what comes out of his mouth. All he cares about himself and money. That's the only two things he cares about. He's racist, he's xenophobic, he's a narcissist. That's all he cares about. And maybe next time these Nigerians will do a little bit more research before they try to endorse somebody. Again, just like the Muslims I think in Detroit too, that said, they weren't going to vote for Kamala Harris because of what they were doing in Gaza. Which I understand that, but do you think Donald Trump was going to do something better? Of course not. Donald Trump continued to give them weapons. Okay, Israel weapons and stuff. He didn't stop it. Okay, so and he still wants to send people back. Okay, he's still, like I said, remember, he was the one that tried to come up with a Muslim ban when he first ran for president. Okay, so I don't know why these people thought that they would be different. Just like, again, they're learning the lessons that the Cubans in Miami, the other Latinos, the blacks for Trump are learning that hard lesson that Donald Trump does not care about anybody. Unless you're white and Christian, Donald Trump does not care about you at all. Okay, Donald Trump is a transactional person. All he cares about is what you can do for him. Okay, and the very fact that he said that out of his mouth in front of his cabinet, and nobody sat there and said a word when he called this country and people garbage, tells you everything you need to know about the sycophants that's sitting around him in that cabinet. None of them said a word. They kept their mouths shut and proceeded to kiss Donald Trump's behind, okay, because they're pathetic and they just want to be close to power, okay? And like I said, I hope my brothers and sisters in Minnesota, the Somalians, I'm just hoping for the best for you because, again, he's sending ICE there and they're not going to do stuff the legal way. They're just going to try to round as much people up as possible. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully maybe the governor and the mayor that can hopefully provide some kind of protection for you. But I feel it's going to get worse before it gets better because Donald Trump is just a narcissist and an evil human being. Okay, he doesn't care about anybody but himself. Okay, he's not busting anybody else that stole the PPE loans. You think it was only the Somalians that was committing fraud with that PPE loans thing? Of course, that was fraud across the board. Across the board, there were people, all kinds of people. We heard all those stories about fraud being, all these people committing fraud. He's just singling them out just because he wants to have that a pretext so he can send ICE there to disrupt that community and stuff and shake them up and get rid of as many of them as possible. Again, just a horrible human being. Again, but like I said, hopefully in the future, maybe the Somalis will learn, they learn that the same lesson that the Cubans, okay, the other Latinos, the blacks for Trumps, that they're going to learn, okay, that you can't trust Donald Trump. All he cares about is himself, okay, and think about it next time before you decide to throw your support for him. Again, like I said, the only reason he ran again was to stay out of jail because he knew he was going to get indicted for a bunch of stuff, and he would have been in jail, except that, Merrick Garland was an idiot who waited and didn't indict him as soon as he got sworn in, okay, he screwed around and didn't want to seem partisan. Okay, and they still say you were partisan anyway. Okay, when you finally brought the case, and you brought him too late, and he simply ran out the clock on you, and now he has a corrupt Supreme Court that will black anything he does. Okay, so there you go. So again, I just say hopefully those Somalians, especially the ones that sitting up there endorsing Donald Trump, like they didn't know his history of racism and stuff, but they're gonna vote for him anyway. Again, voting against your own interests, okay? So I guess, now they'll know. Anyway, let me know what you think of this whole Donald Trump calling them people garbage. And like I said, I have no problem with the people that committed fraud going to jail and being deported. Okay, they broke the law. That's what they did. But all the other people that have been working those jobs and paying their taxes and being good citizens, they're not going to get what they won't deserve what they're going to get, unfortunately, with Donald Trump in the White House. Okay, it's truly unfortunate and a shame. Anyway, in the description box, I have links to my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. Also have a link to my main channel, Trepacer, in the description box as well. Also have a link down below to my Patreon. Also have a link down below to my merchandise store. As you can see, I'm wearing the spherical circles. I have that logo and also the Trepacer logo on my merch. I have it on t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, hoodies, water bottles, teddy bears for men, women, unisex. Follow the link. It'll take you to my merchandise store. Also, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps the channel, and I truly appreciate it. Also, hit the subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload new content to this channel. And this is Paul saying so long. Take care.